Hi, this is Frances Micklem, and today I just want to talk a little bit about why some people go vegan for the environment. And the situation is, I'm sitting here brilliantly in my garden centre uniform, and I find myself worrying even about what's happening there. We have some absolutely fantastic trees, and we have some fantastic flowers, and we have fantastic Christmas trees, living Christmas trees, cut Christmas trees, bulbs, vegetables, treated seeds, uh, organic seeds, and all those things have traces of concern that you have to be aware of to really navigate. And this is where vegans really have an advantage, because they can actually look and be mindful um, of the different things that are being produced, how they're being produced, and make a conscious decision whether to purchase them or not. And of course, animals come into that in hundreds of jobs. You might be working in a cafe or hotel and serving food, and you suddenly realise that there's a huge amount of animals in that supply chain. There's a massive water footprint. So, for example, this is something, just a detail that's quite useful to know, that it uses 15,000 litres of water to make 1 kg, 1 kilogram of beef. So if you think in any terms of the water being the most important resource, and all that water being used to raise the cow, to produce the meat, in the packaging of it, in the transport of it, it probably doesn't even take all those things into account. But this water footprint thing is very important. Another one is sewage. If you think about human waste, how processed it is, uh, and yet there's millions, several millions, billions more than there are of us humans, producing untreated waste, or producing waste that becomes untreated and just runs off into the oceans. And you might think, oh, they're only herbivores themselves, what harm? But actually, they're being fed a massive amount of antibiotics. And you think, why is that? Why are animals fed antibiotics? Why would we allow them into the food chain when it means that we're becoming immune to them ourselves? And so that great medical breakthrough becomes something that we can't use anymore because we're so immune, or built up a resistance to the antibiotics. And it's because, say, a calf is taken away from its mother and taken out of the field, in the aerated scenario, is brought on its own before it gets any of that colostrum or that important early milk that builds up the antibodies. It's put in a barn with countless other young calves. And there you can imagine pneumonia is rife. They get cold. It's all about that certain time of year when it's not quite warm enough to survive. So they have to be kept warm and sometimes that doesn't work, or they don't get the airing right, or they don't get the food right. They're just fed powdered milk, and all that powdered milk, and even the milk of their parents, if they got it, would be is contaminated, because all the grain that we're buying in is not computer generated, genetically modified, and heavily treated with pesticides. And so everything is compromised all the way down the line, and it comes into the food supply. So that's a little bit of detail, but the most important thing is that I think that for vegans it's a consistency of position. I came to veganism myself through this process of energy healing, and the first thing I was taught, literally day one, was it's not things in the world that are good or bad, it's how you respond to them. And what happens then is that bits of information come towards you all the time, and most people ignore because it's too painful and they can't look, and it would make them have to reconsider a whole lot of things in life, or they deny, they just thought it was absolutely fine, everything's absolutely fine. Or you can look, or you can just literally turn towards that light of awareness and really look at what's going on. And if it changes you, so be it, all the better. And I think that, in a sense, on a grand sense, is what the vegan lifestyle brings you to. Is you can actually, when you hear something that isn't consistent, like the use of chemicals, the use of medicines, the intensification of farming, cases of cruelty, you can hear about it and think, yes, that probably is happening. Yes, that is something that I want to try not to perpetuate in my choices. And maybe some people only get to the stage where they say, gosh, that's appalling. But if you can stay with it, really look, get comfortable with it so that you can address it in a responsive rather than reactionary way, then you get consistent, then you get peaceful inside, then you start to become an educator. And then another set of problems arises. What are you going to do for a living? Because you can't support all these industries or any of them, or even individuals that are exploitative. So sometimes you have to get extra creative and come up with your own thing. For me, it's working in this garden centre. Even then, sometimes I find I'm too sensitive. The use of pesticides rather than weeding, and herbicides rather than weeding. The use of the throwing away, the waste. That's another thing that we as vegans can really make a difference to, because we're actually looking at what's being made and appreciating it. There's a level of appreciation that can't be there if you're not able to look, not really able to look at what's going on. Whereas as soon as you're able to look and stay calm and address situations, you find you can do an inventory of what you got and appreciate it. You can see what's there available in supermarkets, and you can support smaller organisations, and you just tie it all in with your lifestyle. So it's a consistent position, it's consistent environmentally, and most importantly, it's consistent when you're thinking, let's look after this place, let's look after each other, let's look after the wildlife, the animals and the planet. It just makes sense. And so be heartened by that, and get a few facts and figures at your fingertips so that when people ask you, you can let them know that there's this massive use of resources and other people's lives, other animals' lives, that can be avoided. So all the best, and thank you for doing what you're doing.